Good morning. The Redbridge Faith Forum has chosen as a topic for these talks, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And I thought it might be advantageous to look at the actual phrase where it comes from, and that may show us some things we don't normally consider in regard to that phrase. The phrase comes from the book of Leviticus, in Hebrew Vayikra, which is the third book of the Torah. And it comes from chapter 9, which is part of what we know of as the Holiness Code. And as you can see what it says in English, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But what's equally significant is what it says below that. I am the eternal. That phrase, I am the eternal, indicates that it's a rule, it's a law. It's not an option. And it's not something you should do, but something you're required to do. And the rabbis asked, as with any law, how do you understand what it is? What are the limits? How do you make yourself known to have followed the law? And what they answered themselves, if you love the neighbor as yourself, that tells you a great deal of what you need to know. How do you love yourself? Do you ever say to yourself, I've loved myself enough? Do you ever say to yourself, I love myself because of this characteristic or that characteristic? Is it possible to love yourself without liking yourself? And is it possible to love your neighbor even if you don't like them? And I think it's pretty obvious what the response was. But there's more to it than that. The rest of the verse says, you will not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, which seems to restrict the meaning more than most of us would think. And I suspect certainly more than other people this morning have spoken of. And to understand that, you have to go to the verse before, where it says, you will not hate your neighbor in your heart. You will rebuke your neighbor and not be sin because of him, and you shall not take vengeance or bear any grudge against the children of your people. So it's commanding it in a specific but a very, very broad sense. You're not allowed to internally, however you act, you're not allowed to hate your brother in your heart. It's not only a matter of action, though action obviously is critical. But one of the things that's critical is you shall rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. What does this mean? Well, in Jewish tradition, we all bear responsibility each for the other. If our neighbor has sinned, we bear a part of that sin. If we've not done everything in our power to prevent that sin, if we've not explained to them sufficiently or well enough why what they're doing is wrong. And therefore, it's critical, if you're going to love your neighbor as yourself, is to be honest with them, to help them, and to rebuke them. But to rebuke them in a way that does not reflect vengeance, does not reflect any grudge, and is not self-interesting, is not trying to help yourself, but together go forward to do what we must do and to be who we must be. So I hope this has given you a slightly different viewpoint than perhaps you've seen before on the phrase, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. May we each find a way to love each other as we love ourselves, unconditionally and irrespective of our strengths and our weaknesses. May you have a day of peace, and may you have a day that helps each of us fulfill who we are and who we need to be. Have a good day.